earlier in the film where she was self-pleasuring. It's a really uncomfortable scene to be in, period. But also the choice for the cinematography for that was, I think, a very, very human thing. Not in some weird, odd, perverse way, as much as we're at the foot of the bed shooting forwards in a very unflattering angle, but it kind of came off so much more human than if it was just almost anywhere else in the room kind of thing.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Dodge this. Welcome back, ladies and gentlewomen, to the Holy Moment Podcast, a podcast where we watch films with you and then discuss the moments that work, the moments that don't, and try to find the moments that reflect truth in unexpected ways. Hey guys, I'm Nathaniel Lirio, your host, a editor, writer, and director in the film industry, and I'm joined by my two absolutely beautiful friends that decided to wear green sweaters and not tell me, so I look like an idiot wearing a navy sweater. Jeffrey, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey. I'm an actor. I am an audiobook narrator. And yes, I am wearing a green sweater right now. And Vega and I did conspire to do this just to make our host look bad today.
I'm aware. I also like, Jeffrey, you got a little chest hair showing. If you guys watch the YouTube version, have no chest hair showing because I have no chest hair because I am Asian. And then I'm joined with my other also Asian co-host. Look at that segue. Vega.
I am Nathaniel's also Asian co-host. I'm a DP editor, and I did conspire with Jeffrey to bring down Nathaniel from the inside by wearing this green sweater today. I also do not believe I have chest hair. I might. I don't think I've looked.
You should check.
Yeah, how do you not know? Have you ever taken your shirt off?
In a general, no.
You were born in this green sweater.
If you've ever seen the best show ever, parentheses, it's not, Arrested Development, I am like Tobias. I am a never nude.
I actually love Arrested Development. I completely forgot about all the jokes in the show because I haven't seen it since I was like 12 or 13, but it's an awesome show. But hey, thanks everyone for joining us today. Today we are talking about the film Fallen Angel. It was actually my pick for dope movie poster. And I don't know if this was like the theatrical release poster, but I also know it's a very popular one. It's like the main one on Letterboxd. It's the one where two of the main characters are on the motorcycle and they're filming really close to their face, but on this really wide lens, so it's really distorted and all green. I just thought it was really, really cool. Also, just a little bit of a side tangent. I have a vendetta against film posters. I always think they're really boring. They're either way too on the nose, like, oh, it's an action movie, so put in every single character ever, or too vague. What is your guys' opinion on movie posters? Do you think in general they work? Do you not care if they're good or bad? Do you just never looked at one ever, like Vega and his chest hair?
There are only a few that really stand out to me when I think of movie posters. Granted, I don't spend a lot of time looking at movie posters. I just watch the movie. But, there's the famous Star Wars posters. I think of The Green Knight as well. Very striking colors and images.
I really like the Green Knight one. This is my just little thought on it. I in college, when I went to film school together with these two, I was always curious why I hated movie posters so much. And I came to this conclusion. I think you guys have seen the trend where like people will like take out their camera, whip it around, like take a quick snapshot of something, and then they'll like color grade it and it will work as like a music album, an album cover. And I think the reason why is music is so subjective and a vibe that I think you can take a picture of a broken mug and it somehow captures the essence of the vibe of music. But movies are different. Some movies are a vibe, but movies are a structured story. And so the poster has to convey a story. So that's why I think sometimes they're often boring because they're trying to just convey in the most practical sense this story in one single image. Sorry, getting off on a tangent. But yes, so I chose Fallen Angel with the cool movie poster. I'm excited to talk to you guys about it today. Just a little bit of background information before we jump into it. So, Fallen Angel was released on September 6th of 1995. The studio was Jet Tone Productions. The director was Wong Kar-wai. It is a Hong Kong movie. Other movies that this director made is In the Mood for Love, Chungking Express, 2046, and The Grand Master. The Grand Master was the only movie I'd seen of his previous work, which is definitely his most action centered movie. Most of his movies, I would say, are more melodramatic or like romance or dramas. That one's like a full on action movie. I would say Fallen Angel is one of the other ones that kind of falls into like a little more of his grounded space with like a romance drama, but still has some action in it. I couldn't find the budget for this film. I did find that his previous film was done for $6 million, and in general, this director likes to do fast and kind of scrappy productions, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was done for less than $6 million. Also, not like a ton of information on box office. It made about $250,000. Our cast, this was an ensemble kind of a movie with different two storylines interweaving. So I kind of hesitant to say the lead of the movie, but the assassin, Leon Lei, who played the character of Wong Ming, the assassin's partner, played by Michelle Reese, the mute character, or the convict, was played by Takashi Kanasuro, and his character was He Shi Woo. The crazy woman was played by Charlie Young, and her name was Cherry, but I don't remember how often she was referred to as Cherry, but she was just the woman who was pining after this mystery man and trying to kill Blondie. And then you kind of have the prostitute, Blondie or Punky, who is played by Karen Mock. This movie did really well within, interestingly enough, the Hong Kong Film Festival space. I don't know much about the culture of film festivals in Hong Kong. I don't know if they really put movies out and like outside of Hong Kong, or they focus within Hong Kong. Don't know, but it won a lot of awards at the Hong Kong Film Awards. I'll just go over like the ones that were notable to me. Best film score, best edited film, best cinematography, best director, best picture. So it definitely won a lot of the major awards at the awards ceremony. Before I give the synopsis of this film, I want to kick us off with a quick question. So obviously this movie is produced, directed, and made in Hong Kong. So it is originally in that language. Jeffrey and Vega, if you had the choice of either giving $100,000, it's like a good amount of money, more than any of us have, but like not enough money to live off of forever, or anytime you watch a foreign film, whatever language it is, you have the choice. So it's not automatic, but you have the choice to listen to the movie and understand the language to a very, very deep understanding, like you were born in it. So you get the context, you get the dialects and everything, but it's only when watching the movie. So, you don't know, Japanese. You just can now watch anime and understand Japanese only when you're watching the medium of film or television. But as soon as you're not in that context, you don't know the language anymore. And you have it for the rest of your life, and you can turn it on and off. Which would you prefer, that power or $100,000?
I would personally prefer to have that power because it would allow me to experience foreign films in a more nuanced way, I feel. Because there's so much in the inflections of words and unique meanings that aren't translatable, that you miss out on by just reading the subtitles, right? And the translator might do a great job of communicating the work, but I also feel that inevitably there's going to be something lost in translation, right?
Hey, that was just something lost in translation is the name of a movie.
I watched that movie.
Oh, were you making a reference?
No, I wasn't, but I watched that movie, and it's an interesting one. Have you seen it?
I haven't, but you have, Vega?
I have. I thought it was kind of mid. That's a whole other can of worms to try and talk about that. I was not the biggest particular fan of it.
I don't know much about it. I just one of our professors we all had going through film school would reference it a lot. I don't remember if he expressly said he loved the movie or just was like, hey, it's a good example of this type of filming technique. But we often saw those clips in different classes. But anyways, not the movie we're talking about today. But yeah, what about you, Vega? Which one would you choose?
Is this only relegated to features?
No, I would say any type of any type of recorded media.
So that would be music?
Oh.
Is that music? Is that also quite literally the news? Is that as long as it has gone through some sort of audiovisual channel?
Yeah.
Audiovisual channel. Do I get it?
I would say yes.
Yeah, then 100%. I'm 100% going to prefer to have that power over $100,000. I mean, I could. Money's money. Being able to some level, at least in whatever portion of time that I'm listening to the thing or watching the thing, immerse myself in that way. That's quite literally something that money cannot buy.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, time, I guess, but I guess being able to learn, or like not learn every language, but like it just kind of be inputting as long as the media is coming into my like system. That's crazy. That's awesome. That would be
I
awesome.
feel like there are ways to profit off it too, to capitalize on it, right? So let's say,
Mr. Money Jeffrey over here.
Capitalism.
I mean,
Mhm.
okay, so this is only audiovisual or just
I think it could be audio or video, or both, ideally
okay, yeah.
together.
So, let's say I listen to a foreign audiobook for a book that is not translated into English. And as I'm listening to it, I'm writing it down in English, right?
That's
And
true.
by the end of the
So you're
audiobook,
gonna pirate all these hard people's work.
Well,
Okay, Jeffrey.
it's less about pirating and it's more about I have a workable translation now that I can.
No, that makes sense.
Hmm.
I like it. Yeah, the best of both worlds. I'm not near as maybe good as a person as two of you, because I think I would just take the $100,000. I think I would just enjoy my subtitles and be $100,000 richer and be able to be 1% closer to buying a house in Atlanta, and maybe be able to afford groceries. But yeah, I was curious because I think it's too easy. If you're like, oh, $100,000 or know any language, I feel like most people, even then I would be like, oh, if I could just know any language, I would pick that power. But it's a little harder when it's like only when you're like watching something is it become useful. So, well, thank you for entertaining me with that. Now into the synopsis of this film, because again, at the Holy Moment Podcast, our hope and dream is to build a community of movie watchers that then want to discuss and learn from the films to become better, either filmmakers or just, enjoy movies and understand them maybe on a deeper level. But to do that, you guys have to watch the movie alongside us. So at the end of every episode, every Monday, we release an episode. And then at the end of the episode, we pull a random movie from a hat from a predetermined list of categories that we'll get into later in the episode. And then the goal is you have 1 week to go and watch that movie, whether it's with your family or maybe over some Chinese takeout or maybe just alone, and then come listen to the next episode on the following Monday. But for those of you who don't do that, here is the synopsis of the movie. Fallen Angel is a stylish Hong Kong crime drama directed by Wong Kar-wai. The film intertwines two loosely connected stories set in the bustling neon-lit streets of Hong Kong. The first follows a disillusioned hitman who wants to leave the business but is trapped in a complex, wordless relationship with his female partner, who silently loves him and cleans up after his jobs, but their partnership never seems to cross paths. The second story features Takashi Kanashuru as a mute ex-convict who breaks into people's businesses after hours and forces strangers into absurd situations. His chaotic, often comedic misadventures contrast with the melancholy hitman storyline, creating a blend of dark humor and emotional depth. Specifically, emotional depth and the idea of feeling lonely in a vast city. So that kind of leads me to my second question that doesn't quite get at the story yet, but growing up, a little bit of backstory with me. I grew up in rural Iowa, so I did not grow up around any cities. Went to college in like a bigger town, but by no means a city. And then I finally moved to the outside of Atlanta after I graduated college to pursue film. And I was always really afraid of bigger cities. I not only had sometimes there's an understandable fear of like, oh, am I going to get robbed? Or there's violence in bigger cities than in rural Iowa or, it's rural America. But I just had like a really deep unsettlement in my soul when I went into cities. Like I could almost feel like a human nature just seemed to congregate in cities, and it would just feel dark and heavy to me. And I would feel sad and lonely. So I was just curious to you guys, have you ever had any experience living in really big cities? And if so, can you relate to this idea of feeling lonely within a big city, or do you actually connect? Like I have a friend who, she says she feels the opposite. She feels like she feels hope and joy and like there's hope within humans coming together in this big city, and she feels excited about it. So can you guys connect to that at all or have any experience with it?
I think that it can be quite the adventure to explore a downtown of a larger city. And it's an adventure because anything can happen, it feels. Whether it's like good or bad, right? You might get shanked, and murdered in an alley. That's no good. But you might also find this odd shop that sells really specific trinkets that you wouldn't think that this kind of establishment would exist, but it exists in the city. I don't know, there's like so many possibilities that I find exciting in the city.
Have you ever felt, and I see where you're coming from there, but do you ever feel maybe spiritual is too broad just for this concept, but just have you ever like when you go into cities, do you feel any type of emotional positive or negative because you're in the city for whatever reason? I definitely get the idea of like bad things can happen, but there's also good things in a city. But like, is there just like an emotional response to being in a big city to you, or no?
That feels like I don't think I've felt that but once, which was sometime in high school in New York. And I think the feeling that you're describing ties into this like thing that I've tried to move past, or like in the like it's in like I guess there's like an internet form of like doomer core, but I think there's also within evangelicalism just that what you were kind of speaking towards reminds me of this like fire and brimstone, like
Mm-hmm.
the the sin lives in the city kind of
Yeah.
talk. And so I've in one instance kind of I think can get at what you're getting at, but I'm not entirely sure if that's what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I think ultimately maybe I'm not fishing for a correct answer, but maybe I'm fishing for a certain like, hey, have you felt this specific emotional thing? But really, I'm just curious how you guys interact. I'm just curious if other people have any type of emotional response to cities. I understand being like, I'm afraid I might get robbed, or I can't wait to go to this really, really cool, unique place. But like, I'm just curious if people ever walk into cities and whether it's let's say they're Catholic or Christian or Muslim, whether they have like a spiritual episode sounds weird, but like a spiritual emotional response to a city, or if you're agnostic or like an atheist or something else, if there still is just like a negative or positive. So I'm just curious if people have strong emotional reactions to cities, and if so, why? Because I just know for me growing up I did, but I haven't met a lot of people that have. So it could just be a me thing. And I won't disagree. I do think some of that does come from some of that like Christian background where you are taught that fire and brimstone cities is where sin congregates, and that's where they sacrifice all the children to Satan. So there's a demonic presence over the city. Not going to get into any of that, but just to say, I think that's a little too heavy and can't be, and that's I think unfair to apply to most cities and to most places, and really just living in fear. But not to say there's not a kernel of that truth, like you were saying, Vega, that lives within me.
Well, I remember when I was a kid, my parents were driving through cities and we'd see these towering skyscrapers, and I would always be in awe of them. And not so much when I'm driving, but when I'm walking through a downtown and I am surrounded by these gigantic buildings and architectural marvels, it does make me really appreciate human ingenuity and creativity, on the one hand, at least. And then on the other, again, you just like, there's so much that happens at a city, like good or bad. I don't know.
This isn't the same question, but I don't know if this will reveal anything real quick. If you guys had unlimited amount of, not about unlimited, but if you guys could live in the city or in the country, you can't pick. Kind of like, so we went to college and I'm in a town called Cleveland, so kind of medium size that still has everything you need, but isn't like a huge city. If you guys had to like live in an apartment in downtown New York versus live in a cabin that took an hour to find a Walmart, which would you prefer?
I think I would live in the apartments in New York in that case.
Okay.
If it takes me that long to get my essentials, then yeah. But also, in the city, you have access to everything. Like, do you want to engage in some hobby, but you have no one to do it with? Well, you can find people in the city, right?
Yeah.
People don't always have that luxury in rural areas.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Vega?
You're not in a like knocking down rural areas way, because I've currently live in one. I live in rural South Georgia, but I think I would also probably head to maybe not necessarily particularly New York, just a bigger city.
Yeah, it doesn't
and
have
just
to be
live in
New
a
York.
apartment somewhere. Like I guess speaking to like your earlier thing of like, is there some sort of emotional thing or response to the religious extent? Once when I was younger, but to a more modern, more like current day thing, I was in Hong Kong last December, and I think there was just like three cool things about it. I mean, outside of just being in Asia again, was like some of the history of like just how everything is around, like, oh, this building's been here for X amount of time, or oh, like, oh, this is where this took place, or whatever, or like history, progress, like seeing how like some of the historical parts of like, hey, this has been here for X amount of time, but now there's like, I don't know, like a cat petting store on top of, or like a cat cafe, I think is what they're called.
Yeah.
Like on top of this, but like maybe 15 years ago, that was like some IT firm or whatever. Like it just continuously moving, and like all of those things are coexisting together. And then I think that brings into the third thing of why I like what I really did like about that experience in a city, which is it just feels very alive in a way that like sometimes some areas in at least rural America don't always feel alive. Not that they aren't, but it is a very significant difference, at least in experience, or my experience.
For sure. I mean, like, even though like growing up in Iowa, I had family out in Seattle, so we'd often go out there and visit them. And I really grew to love Seattle. And it is like just a different world. Like, yeah, again, a different world, obviously, because you're surrounded by skyscrapers and anything's at your fingertips, but it's just the energy. You know, how they say like there's energy in the big city. I definitely agree with them. And there's a time and place where I want that energy, and there's a time and place where I want to be in a cabin away from people. But anyways, thank you for entertaining me with this question, just because I think there's a certain amount of the story to be found in Fallen Angels with this concept of I won't say specifically humans feeling lonely in the city. I think that story has been tackled by other movies, by other directors better, but I don't think Fallen Angels was specifically diving into this idea of like people feeling lonely in cities. I think that was one of the core ideas, obviously, but I think there was something a little more. It was saying something a little more than just that idea, and so I thought it would be interesting to hear your guys' perspective personally before we jump into the movie.
Yeah, and I read that the director viewed this movie as sort of a partner to Chungking Express, and that they both showcase different sides of life in Hong Kong. So I would be interested in watching that movie at some point and seeing how they compare.
Yeah, I also haven't seen Chunking Express. I know it's like you said, Jeffrey. It's not a sequel, but it's like a loose enough. Like they definitely could be back to back. Watches. That would be good to kind of understand maybe more where this director's coming from. And yeah, I mean, Hong Kong played such a big role in this film, kind of feeling like a character, seeing both sides of. I mean, my next question, something I loved about this film, even though it took me a little while, because I tried to go to movies pretty blind, barely knew anything about this movie besides that there was some type of spy or agent. So I thought it was gonna be much more action drama than what we got.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. Especially also just from the poster, hence why I picked it. I was expecting like a really gritty action drama, and it just wasn't that. I mean, it had components of it, but it wasn't that for the most part.
I even saw it described as a neo-noir when I looked it up, and this just was not.
Yeah, same.
It was not that. I don't think so, at least.
Were you disappointed, Jeffrey, that it wasn't like a neo-noir, gritty drama action?
No, I wasn't disappointed at all. I liked that the focus was on the characters. I liked that it was more drama and character studies and vignettes than straight action.
I was surprised with especially how we opened the film. You know, like a hired assassin killing people, pretty heavy action stuff, pretty dark. I was surprised with how slice of life it ultimately ended up being.
For a lot of it feels like a vlog for some of it. It's just we're following this person's day to day, and they're narrating what they're doing and how they go about life. In fact, there's less dialogue than I was expecting. There's just long stretches of silence, or just them engaging in an activity accompanied by voiceover.
Yeah, a lot of I mean, and that's my next question is the idea of these two storylines that were so drastically different. Speaking of Hong Kong and the city life, I unlike Vega, I've never been to Hong Kong. I don't know much about the culture or the people, but I thought it was cool how in the storyline of the assassin and the assassin partner and their whole issue of like she's in love with him and he just wants to get out of the business and they never physically really see each other till the end of the movie. It was a much darker, like that had dark, gritty tones. It held a serious tone all the way throughout the movie. And then to its counterpart, when we're following Hishui, and his is hilarious. It's a comedy almost. Like obviously there's like tragic elements in his story, don't get me wrong, but it's played up as a much more a lot more humor within it. So I think that's cool, maybe highlighting just humanity in general, but also I wonder if there is this sense in Hong Kong of like bustling, fun energy in life, but also pretty dark underbelly of the city. I don't know because I don't know much about Hong Kong. But my question for you guys is, of the two storylines that, kind of interweave and they thematically interweave, but they don't super interweave as far as like the actual characters, which one did you enjoy watching more and why?
Well, I think that the convict is a foil to the assassin and also to a lesser extent the partner, because the assassin has a hard time making decisions for himself. Meanwhile, the convict repeats, I decided to be my own boss. I'm going to be my own boss. He's very active about making decisions and taking steps. As for how he relates to or parallels the partner, I think he deals with loss a lot better than she does, right? She is clinging on to this relationship that isn't really real as far as her personal connection with him goes, with the assassin. But she's clinging on to it. And the moment he expresses a desire to end the business contract, she arranges to have him killed, right? Well, if I can't have you, no one can have you. You can't have yourself. Whereas after the girl at the phone leaves the convict, he reflects on that situation. He's like, well, I decided I'd better myself. And we see him working at the bar now, like properly, right? Later, when his dad dies, he's reminiscing over the videotape that he had made. And there seems to be some measure of peace about it, whereas she never had that peace. She never let herself have that peace.
Yeah, those are really good points. I feel like I have a hard time not enjoying, but I have a hard time understanding and following a movie if it doesn't. If it doesn't follow the 3-act structure. I'm not saying that's the case. It's just like foreign films. Like I mean, it's a different language, so like contextually it's different. The way they explore emotions and story is going to be different. So I think I was playing catch up. Like every scene, I was 3 scenes behind, trying to figure out for example, in the last episode when we reviewed Father Stu, my really big complaint was I never felt like I understood the emotions of Father Stu or of the character Stu. I always felt confused why he was making a decision. That made me frustrated. I thought about kind of being a broken record and saying the same thing for this movie, but the more I thought about it, it wasn't true. It wasn't necessarily that I didn't understand where these characters were coming from. It just was like contextually so different than what I'm used to that I was confused most of the time. I think after sitting down and kind of discussing it with my roommate and thinking about it a little more, it's a movie that I definitely would benefit from like a rewatch, but I wasn't frustrated by any of the characters' choices. I wasn't like, oh, well, why is he breaking into these businesses or why isn't he bettering his life in this way? Or why is he quitting? Why is he taking a last job that's going to kill him? I feel like it just was, so it wasn't a poor execution of character motivation. It was just a miscommunication, probably on a cultural. And also, I think this director, even within Hong Kong, does very stylized cinematography and storytelling. So for all of that, I think it's one of those movies that has to be rewatched 2 to 3 times to fully appreciate and understand kind of what's going on, especially as an American or just, someone who's not from Hong Kong or maybe, that type of culture. So all that to be said, those are really insightful thoughts, Jeffrey, that I didn't even begin to think of because that movie finished and I was like, I don't really understand what I just watched. So I'm really here on this podcast for you guys to tell me what I watched. But what about you, Vega? Which story did you enjoy more and if so, why?
I'm not super sure if there was like, well, maybe I am. I think the storyline that I like to follow throughout the whole thing was just the relationship between the son and the father. But I don't know if I guess it's like a 2-for-1 instead of just like a 1, like following one of the characters.
Yeah.
And very traditional terms. It was a really, I guess, sweet thing to Paul. I don't know if as sweet is the word, because I guess in a similar sense to Nathaniel, maybe I just don't understand some of the context of what was going on the times I watched it. But just like, I guess, seeing how they are near the beginning of the film and seeing how they progress and like how when he has the video camera and he's recording his dad sleeping, which I guess sounds a bit strange to say out loud, but I thought it was just kind of like tender.
Yeah.
So,
I realized that I actually didn't answer Nathaniel's question. I just went on a spiel about foils.
Yeah, if I was a better host, I would have realized you didn't answer my question.
No, I mean, I would actually say the same. I just thought that the relationship between father and son was portrayed very well, and I think his character, the ex-convict's character, he was just so fun to follow because despite him being a convict and coercing people into accepting his business, he seemed oddly pure-hearted,
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's a sense in which he does not belong in the city, but he makes the most of what he has. And he just keeps on moving forward. And I thought that was very endearing. I will say it was so funny him just forcing the ice cream on that one man.
Yeah, it was one of the best scenes I've watched in a long time because it was so ridiculous. It was so funny. Yeah, when he just because again, I just didn't, and especially because that's how we're introduced to him. Like we open the movie for the first 10 to 15 minutes in this really kind of like gritty, I kill people for a living, I'm in love with the guy that kills people. And then we just cut away to this dude who's like, I rip pants off people to blackmail them and to pay me to wash their clothes. I pin people to the ground and wash their hair and kind of force them under knife to pay me to wash their. At that point, why don't you just rob people, man? Just rob people, which I thought was funny. But I think
robbing with extra steps.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately he wanted to be a good person, and that's what I like about him. He kind of is a little bit of a simpleton, but I think he was trying to be a productive member of society, and he didn't really know how to. And I mean, we even kind of get that halfway through his arc, where he's like, I kind of started realizing, in the weirdest way, businesses have their own emotions. I can't just break in and start abusing these businesses. I gotta be more mature about it. But anyways, before we get more distracted, to wrap back around, so Vega, you were saying kind of it wasn't even necessarily. Because it is kind of, well, romance is a pretty strong word to use for this movie, but it does follow romantic relationships. So it's interesting that both of you are kind of choosing neither. It's not like the assassin and the assassin helper, or the assassin and the prostitute, or the mute guy and the crazy woman. You guys are saying kind of your favorite storyline was the father and son dynamic. And I think I agree with you guys. Also, Vega, I think sweet is the perfect word. I thought this father and son dynamic was so sweet, especially, again, maybe not having the most context and history with Asian film culture, but I feel like a lot of it, they depict the older generation as being really harsh on the younger generation. Be like, oh, you're lazy and you go get a job and be productive and make money. So I just thought it was so cute that the dad was just kind of running this little hotel and took care of his son, and he just let his son be his weird little self. And maybe that reveals something about all of us. Maybe we all just want our dads to let us be our weird little selves, running around with, running around recording things. See, now I understand why we're related so much to that storyline. We just want to let our fathers let us record them cooking in their underwear.
Remember when he puts the camera up his underwear?
Up, yeah.
Trying to get a peek of his dad's balls.
I mean, he was always trying to bust into him while he's in the bathroom. Whenever the dad's in the bathroom, he's trying to bust that door down. I'm like, well, what can I see in here? So, you know what? Never mind. The dad should have shunned that child. Should have beaten him.
It was Jeffrey in college core. Well, not Jeffrey in college, but somebody trying to break into Jeffrey in college core.
Oh, yeah. That's a fun story.
Yeah. And in middle school, I was using the restroom once. I was in a stall. I was minding my own business. All of a sudden, I see the crack of the door. There's an eyeball there.
No.
There's an eyeball. And I kick it.
Front row seats.
And he leaves, but it's always stuck in my brain. That singular eyeball.
No.
As wide as can be.
Oh my. Yeah. He was getting the show. speaking of this humor in this film and kind of the slapstick nature, did you guys find the humor, I would say absurdist humor mixed with a little bit of physical comedy? Did you find it funny? Did you find it annoying? Did you find it media? Like, did you find the humor that this movie presented, which seems very different than a Western humor, funny?
I did. I thought that there were humorous, scenarios and events unfolding, such as, I don't know, his just coercing various people to accept services from him. It was very well done. And just their exasperated pleas, like, please, I don't want a pamphlet, I don't want an ice cream cone, I don't want a haircut.
Yeah, that poor one guy that he kept following around. Also, like, is it implied that he cut off that dude's finger at the end of the film?
I have no idea. I was thinking that myself.
Yeah, I have a thought about that, which will wrap back around to the end of the film, so I'll save it for a little bit later. But I was like, because this whole time, like, he was kind of crazy and deranged, but in kind of a sweet way. And then all of a sudden at the end, he's like, you're not doing what I want you to do, so I'm going to cut your fingers off. And I was like, oh, a little upsetting.
Bit of tonal whiplash there for sure.
Yeah. But what about you,
It's
Vig?
the big city, Nathaniel.
It's the what?
It's just life in the big city.
See, I'm telling you, this is why I feel uneasy in the big city. Someone's going to, like, I'm walking down the street of Atlanta and they're going to come up with a butcher knife and be like, well, give me your fingers. Give me those piggies. And it was so funny because, like, as they closed the sliding door so we didn't see the violence, the guy just, like, resigned himself to it. He's like, oh, don't cut them all. If you cut them all off, I can't go and make money to give to you. Like, leave me a few fingers. It was just so bizarre, the humor. But did the humor work for you, Vega?
I think for the most part it did. I don't know if I think there was some points in the film where I wasn't sure if I was supposed to find it funny. I probably was, but I don't know. I don't know if that's as much of a giant cultural difference as much as like I didn't know a whole lot about the movie going into it kind of thing. And it just like, I believe it's Assassin and Blondie in the McDonald's.
Yeah.
Blondie walks up to the assassin and I think he kind of just looks around like first person POV kind of style. And it's just a really wide angle shot showing that there is no one else in the McDonald's, but like she could have gone anywhere else to say it, but she goes up to him.
Yeah, that moment in particular, like the quick snappy editing, there was a few moments in general, but that one specifically really made me feel like I was watching an Edgar Wright film. Kind of Edgar Wright's really quick paced editing to highlight the humor and it to be very physical humor. Every once in a while, I was feeling like I was watching certain scenes from Edgar Wright.
Yeah. That scene also reminded me of the meme of like the row of 27 urinals and then the two guys at the end right next to each other.
Yeah, just taking a piss next. Yeah, that's how you show your dominance. Next time you go to McDonald's, Jeffrey, I need you to like go hunched over. Have you seen Death Note?
I have seen like the first half of Death Note.
Okay, I need you to go sit in a chair like not light, like L. Like sitting, like his feet in the chair, hunched over, his toes curled, and like eating fries, staring into someone's eyes. And then I need you to send a video of that.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
Good. Maybe if you do that, we'll let you host an episode.
Please,
Maybe.
if that's what it takes, I'll do it.
Hard maybe. So last thing I kind of want to talk about these alternating stories, specifically about the fact that we're going back and forth between these two storylines. Did the whiplash, because Vega, you use word whiplash, I think it is totally correct. Did the whiplash work for you guys? Following this really, I don't know about stressful, but this really, I almost want to use the word almost, so forgive me, pretentious. There's moments with the assassin storyline where I felt like it was kind of pretentious with how artsy and how high strung everything was versus the really, really comical, lighthearted slice of life style of the Mute storyline. Did you guys enjoy that whiplash? Did it work for you? Did it make the story better? Or was it that whiplash that took you out of the story and made you a little confused?
I liked it because of that perspective I brought up earlier of the characters being foils to one another. And it puts each character in greater relief to show them contrasted with characters that are so different from themselves. Like, again, the assassin and the partner are both people that are very stuck, you know, doing a thing that ultimately they don't want to do, right? There's that scene where in the narration she says, "I know how to make myself happy," but she's wallowing sorrowfully at the bar, and it's very clear that she does not know how to make herself happy. But meanwhile, the ex-convict, he's trying new things, right? He's pursuing a relationship. It doesn't work out. He moves on, you know. He tries a thing with the video camera, makes some fun memories, has a meaningful relationship with his father, whereas, cut back to the assassin, the partner, they don't have any meaningful relationships with anyone.
It's also interesting on that note that I didn't really realize this till you're saying it, but it's also the assassin and the assassin helpers. Their relationships were built off of sex. Like, for your example, when you said her line, which I thought was fun and clever, but it was like, I know how to what was it, pleasure?
I know how
Keep
to make
myself happy.
myself happy.
Yeah, I know how to make myself happy. It goes into like a long kind of art. I don't even want to say it went to a long scene of her like self pleasuring herself. Kind of awkward and weird to watch, but it's telling the story of this woman who's deeply unsatisfied and doesn't know how to keep herself happy. But also she's saying like she wants this relationship, she wants this connection with this person. But again, it's shown that the only way she maybe even knows how is through this sexual lens. And same for the assassin. You can kind of tell he's unhappy with his work. He's unhappy, kind of living the life of assassin has led to a very lonely existence. And the only really relationship we get to see with him is him hooking up with this prostitute over and over again. Not even over and over again, because it's the whole thing of like, it's a one night stand. I don't want to like reconnect with you. But again, we only see him connecting with people through sex as well. And then, murdering people. But that's not really connecting with people. That's more like the opposite of connecting with people, deconnecting people.
Yeah, and it's ironic too, her saying that she can make herself happy and then masturbating, because there's a later scene after she hears the song that the assassin wanted her to listen to, and she's masturbating again, but this time she's sobbing, mascara, streaming down her face. Also, I do not think that the partner was in love. It was obsession, it was infatuation. There was a moment in the very beginning when I thought that it was going in the direction of, oh, they're going to abandon their lifestyle and find love and comfort in each other. But gradually, I started realizing, no, this is only going to end in tragedy for them, and she's just so stuck on this thing.
It's the notion of like, we don't see everything about the assassin necessarily, how it all started, and maybe there's more backstory that we don't know. But it seems like this idea I mean, we even see it. There's a scene because she like cleaned, like, it seems like there's this safe house where anytime he does an assassin job, he goes to the safe house afterwards, like lay low. And her job is to prep it for when he comes. And then after he leaves, to clean it up and prep it again. And she's like, there's a scene where she goes through his trash and be like, it's surprising how you can get to know so much through their trash. So I really do think actually the movie is telling this idea of, you're not in love with someone. You're in love with the idea of someone. You're in love with the idea of you created about someone off of basically nothing, which honestly I think is a really dangerous thing that a lot of people do in this day and age. We become infatuated with what we hope and desire and need people to be, and it's often very unhealthy.
I was disappointed that, so like at the end when she and the ex-convict ride off on that motorcycle together, and the implication is, oh, they're together now. I don't know. I don't feel good about that, because she has not grown. I don't get that sense at all. And I just think it's going to end tragically for them, right? We don't see what happens next, but the last person that she was infatuated with, she ended up killing indirectly because she just couldn't let go. Whereas he has had a string of experiences where he's, found something he wanted and he's had to let go. Or there's someone in his life that has been a rock, like his father, and now that rock is no longer there. It just seems that they're characters on two different trajectories. And so if they hadn't gotten together in the end, I think that I would have liked that better. And I think it wouldn't have hurt the story if their stories had remained separate till the end.
I don't know how I feel about the ending. I think that it came. I guess it just came about so fast that they were in each other's lives all of a sudden. And he kind of had that monologue at the end where he's like, "Oh, I really like the idea of like we've been in the same place so many times and there's been no sparks that our time is almost. If there were going to be sparks for a moment, it would have happened, but too many times have gone by." But then he was like, "But tonight there are sparks." I think that's just really interesting. But before I dive in, maybe to the end of the movie, what about you, Vega? Did the whiplash of the two tones work for you? Because I think ultimately the whiplash create like a foil or contrast was created on purpose. It wasn't on accident. But did you enjoy that, or was it a bit much?
I believe the whiplash worked for me overall. I thought it was a pretty solid use of kind of showing how all of these characters are in their own way seeking some kind of connection in a broad sense, and then think how you were saying about how like I think they're like very contrasty, or I think Jeffrey used the word like foil, like that, but just it's still within the same, I think, broad umbrella of baseline. Everyone's, I guess, umbrella slash foundation. Everyone is trying to find or like seeking some form of connection in some way or form of in some of the actions that they're doing, kind of. But also like seeing how vastly different that looks for the different characters in the film.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I think this movie for me would be so much better on a rewatch. Just because contextually, again, I'll be a lot less confused, but I think I'm going to pick up a lot more on. Mm, okay. It felt like a very well crafted movie that had a point. I think just for me, I was missing that point and could feel like this is well crafted, but I don't know to what end. And now after discussing this and mulling over like the fact that there were foil, I just can see the story more. So now going back in, I'm really going to appreciate the fact that this director again did a very good job crafting every scene, because it didn't feel like just some BS that was thrown together. It felt like there was some intention behind it. On that note of just how well crafted it was, I feel like I'd be a fool to not talk about one of Wong Kar-wai's films, and especially Fallen Angels, and not talk about the cinematography. I mean, this movie had such a unique style, one of the most unique styles I've ever seen. And I also know the director has kind of honed this style over like decades, and he's kind of known for that dreamy, slow motion, almost stop motion, where the characters are walking and everything's kind of blurred out in the background and moving faster. But also in this movie, he really, really utilized the wide angle lens. Almost the entire movie was shot on this really distorted, wide angle lens that led more to his type of style of this distortion of the world around us. So, what did you guys think of the cinematography?
I thought it was incredible. I thought that the compositions were really impressive, and the colors. Everything had a sort of grungy glow to it, which communicated exactly what I think the director wanted to communicate. This is a dirty environment. It's unclean. Everyone in this environment has been through shit. Also, the fact that the camera was handheld for a lot of it, I think it did the work to make me feel present in some scenes, such as when they're walking through the train platform, or at the beginning with the escalators. I think that's what contributed to the vlog-like feeling for me.
For sure. What about you, Vega? Was there any specific thing that stuck out to you, especially being someone who is a DP himself?
I think the cinematographer did an amazing job in the choice of lensing used, but also in the camera movement, like all of it, I think made this film so unusually, I think I would use that phrasing, so unusually immersive, and like a way that I think through more modern-ish mediums, like to get to maybe achieve some sort of a similar vibe, like Jeffrey's saying, it might be more vlog-like slash, like I think it might be like an axis of like three things, like some sort of like in the modern era, like some vlog-like aesthetic, some kind of VR goggle kind of thing, like how that is supposed to feel quote unquote like immersive now, like those two things mixed with, I don't know what the third axis would be. It would just, it really dragged you into it in a way that like you could not, like, as long as you were paying attention and watching the movie and not getting distracted in a way that you couldn't really like fight or get away from. Like, I think I guess maybe the third axis is certain techniques in modern filmmaking that kind of may just make it seem, or like may try to give it some more level of immersion by getting you closer to the subject and using like an 85 or a 105 or a 135, so you're like up close with your subject. But I think this film, specifically bringing into the moment earlier in the film where she was self-pleasuring, it's a really uncomfortable scene to be in, period. But also the choice for the cinematography for that was, I think, a very, very human thing. Not in some weird, odd, perverse way, as much as we're at near the bed of the foot of the bed, shooting forwards in a very unflattering angle, but it kind of, to me at least, came off so much more human than if it was just almost anywhere else in the room kind of thing. Like if you were just someone sitting in the room, or if you were someone sitting in the room and you weren't engaging, then you might just kind of look at it from sort of a weird POV. Like, I think a lot of the different angles and kind of that kind of thing feel like they would be placed in very non-traditional places. I think if you guys both were in grade school at some point and sat in a desk and put your ear to the desk and then tapped the desk to like hear how loud of a sound it is through the desk. Did you guys both do that or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Like bringing your head down to that level and it's kind of seeing the world from that POV, or even like if you're laying down on the ground and you're kind of just seeing things from down there, anything of that sort, that is what this movie visually brought to me. And I really very, 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 very much enjoyed that level of immersion, that kind of immersion, because I just don't very much see it often done in a way that's so human and almost pure in a way.
I have two thoughts off that. One that kind of connects what you and Jeffrey both said, but first I want to say really, really fascinating what you just said there at the end. We as humans spend pretty much our whole lives at a certain height with our eyes. And it's just interesting that the perspective, and I know this seems really small and silly, but it's just true. Like the example you just gave, Vega, of when you sit in your cubicle, wherever you work, let's say you go to an office every day and you sit down in your cubicle to look at your computer to write out your emails. That is how you perceive the world, the perspective you perceive the world every single day forever. But it's just crazy that you could do something as simple as laying your head down against your desk and the whole world looks different. You've sat in that chair thousands of times and now you're seeing the world in a different perspective by moving your head 30 degrees and lowering your body just a bit. It's just crazy that we as humans get so used to seeing things in the same way over and over and again. That relates to movies, specifically the cinematography of how they're shot. You know, this like the 50 lens, the lens that's most equivalent to the human eye. Medium wide shots, very things we're used to. No distortion, no coming up with these unique different perspectives. So it's just interesting that, to have some unique perspectives, specifically within cinematography, you don't have to like turn the world upside down. Sometimes you just have to lay down and put your head on the table and stare at something for a little while, and it just shifts how everything could look. And then secondly, how I wanted to wrap back around to two things you just said. Vega, the last thing you said, how it was almost so human and maybe almost pure. And Jeffrey, you were saying how you could really feel the life of the city. I found myself impressed with the tone specifically they were able to carry of the city. Because yeah, Jeffrey, you're right. It does feel like a city where everyone's dealing with shit. It's kind of gross. It's a very green, grainy film. Doesn't make you feel very pleasant. But they weirdly did a good job of making it not depressing to a degree. So like for instance, I think of the movie Seven, and I think of the movie the new Batman. They really specifically tried to make that city feel alive and disgusting and vile and bad. Like I think they purposely shot it certain ways, colored it certain ways, certain cinematography techniques to make that city feel like a character and make it feel uncomfortable to be in. I weirdly was whimsically and magically won over by Hong Kong in this film. Yeah, again, it's kind of gross. There's literally drug people being shot up and there's prostitutes in the street and garbage, but there's something magical about all of it. So again, kind of a weird comparison, but this scene of watching this woman pleasure herself was shot in such a humane way that it wasn't like whimsical and pure and happy. It was a deeply sad thing, but it was shot in a humane way. It was shot in a way that we can understand and connect with. And the city itself wasn't good or bad. It was kind of the city that people lived in, and good things happen and bad things happen in it. But the perspective wasn't so narrow that you could only see one route to it's a bad city filled with crime, or it's a perfect city where everyone's happy. It felt alive and it felt comfortable, maybe is a little bit strong, but it felt nice to be in that city while watching the movie.
Exactly. I could see myself with a small group, perhaps, enjoying a night on the town in this city, right? If I was hanging out with y'all in Hong Kong, I could see myself having a good time, you know? Whereas Gotham City and the Batman, I could not see myself enjoying that in the slightest. The moment I step outside a corner store, I might not even be stepping outside of the corner store. I'm getting mugged, you know? But here, the pub, the bar with the red lighting and everything looked very cozy, you know? I want to be there. I want to go there.
Like you said at the beginning of the film, Jeffrey, the city has endless options. You could step out in the corner and be mugged, or you could step on the corner and meet the love of your life. And it's nice. There's not like it's well balanced.
Yeah. To the point of perspectives, no, that was such a good illustration with the desk, Vega. That's like real worthy in my mind. But that comment also reminds me of the scene from Dead Poets Society when Robin Williams has everyone stand on top of his desk and just look at what the classroom looks like from that angle, because it's not an angle that they ever find themselves viewing things in. And it's just a shift of perspective does so much.
Yeah. On that note, hey audience, if anyone out there is listening, whether it's when we release this episode next Monday or in 2 years, when we actually gain a following, a little bit of a challenge to you. Go find an area of your life where you spend a lot of your day, whether it's your bedroom, whether it's your office, whether it's your car, whether it's your kitchen. You spend a good chunk of time, and find a way to perceive it physically different. Go lay your head on the countertop, go stand on a stool, go close your eyes and lay on your back and lay straight up. Just find a new perspective to view your area, and then go tag us in it on Instagram at The Holy Moment Podcast, or send us an email at The Holy Moment Podcast to be like, hey, I always interpret the world this way, and I took a moment to stop and interpret it in a slightly different way. And I think that's really important. It's always important to maybe remember there are different perspectives of like worldview, of like theology and politics. But I think it's important to remember there's different perspectives within our own eyeballs. We can literally perceive the world differently, and we don't have to perceive it the exact same way. So it's a little challenge to you guys. Go find an interesting way. Take a picture, tag us, send us a message, DM us. That would be kind of fun. And maybe this week we'll find a way to do it ourselves and post it to our Instagram or Twitter.
For our audience's viewing pleasure, I have done just that with my camera, giving you a view of the closet where you're looking up.
It's impressive, Jeffrey. You seeing all of your closet now, you really did soundproof the entirety of it.
Yeah,
Good on you.
Thank you.
I really wish you changed the perspective of your camera to reveal just like a sex doll in the top of your closet. Look at my different angle, audience.
Well, let's just say there's a reason I've only put it up this high.
Not down.
Yeah.
Not that crotch shot.
I thought about standing on my chair, but I knew that I would be treating people to a crotch shot, and I don't want that.
Plus, you just spent $4 on that chair in Goodwill.
Yeah.
Surely you can't break it.
No.
But on that note, I don't want to wait too much longer to the episode to get into kind of our holy moment. So if you guys are curious why the podcast is called The Holy Moment, if you're curious why the segment is called The Holy Moment, guess what? You'll have to go watch one of the first 3 episodes because we get into it then and maybe in a future episode. But we have done it a few times. So if you're interested, I think all of us have given our perspective at some point in the past episode. So go look at it over there. But there is a reason. It's a film term, and there's a reason we themed the whole podcast around it. But just for a little bit of background, this is going to be the Holy Moment segment. We're going to talk about our favorite parts of the movie and why it's our favorite parts as filmmakers. So who wants to jump off with their holy moment of Fallen Angels?
I think I'm going to point to 2 deeply human moments. Moment number 1 is, having that context of her saying, I know how to make myself happy. I think the second time we see her pleasuring herself, but the mascara is streaming down her face and she's sobbing, and honestly, this is not doing anything for her, right? It's a futile effort to assuage her sorrow. It's just a very sad and sympathetic moment, and very human too. It's like we try to fill our lives with these things that will ultimately not make us happy, right? And we try to fool ourselves into thinking that that's enough, but it's not. I thought that was a really beautiful and tragic moment. And then the second is when the convict is watching the videotapes that he had made with and of his dad. And the audience sort of reminisces with the convict, right? Because we're there as those scenes like played out in real time, but now we're seeing it again through the lens of this camera, and now with the circumstances of the dad is now dead. It's also cool that he doesn't sit in the dad's chair. He watches it from a distance, and so the chair feels all the more empty for it.
Yeah, no, that's good. I to jump on your first holy moment for a quick second. I'm always at battle with specifically film and television, but we'll say film for the sake of this conversation. I'm always on an internal battle of what do I think is, for the sake of story and for the sake of art, where is the line for explicit sexual things in movies? Just on a moral level, on a level of like, does that need to be explored? Did we need that sexual scene to explore this idea of being a human or blah, 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 blah? I don't know. And I'm hoping maybe the more movies I watch on this podcast to talk to you guys, I'll have more of an answer. But I will say, as uncomfortable of a scene it was to watch this woman masturbate, I think I appreciate that it wasn't, and I'm not saying all Western film, if there's any sex scenes, it's always sexual and just selling, sex sells. I'm not like, sometimes they do a very subtle job and a good job making a sex scene component to the storytelling. Sometimes, not always. But I really appreciate that this was so clearly not about, like Vega said, it wasn't a flattering angle. It wasn't flattering color, and it wasn't flattering movement of the camera. It was much more of a raw thing that someone's doing, and it's subtext for what's actually going on in them, of this deeply unhappy person that only knows how to connect with this make-believe ideal partner she made through a sexual act. So I definitely get why you made that your holy moment, Jeffrey, and it's just something I've really been thinking about. Just how as a filmmaker, as a human, do I want to interact with sexual media and film? But I really appreciated this one. While it was uncomfortable, hard to watch, wouldn't want to watch with my parents or kids, I understand why the filmmaker did it, and I don't think it was trying to use sexual things to sell a movie, but trying to use, we are sexual beings on this earth, and using that component of us to tell the story, I think makes sense. But what about you, Vega?
I guess before getting into the holy moment part, I thought it was kind of fascinating. That kind of word, that kind of phrasing. Yeah, I believe it was kind of fascinating, interesting, those sort of adjectives, that the film would take things that generally maybe in a lot of movies made in the United States, maybe some in Europe. I haven't watched an extreme amount of UK based film, I don't suppose, but at least for the US, a lot of different, like, say you take that same scene of circling it back for like the 18th time of the lady pleasuring herself in that room. Is there media in the States that may portray it in a in a similar light? Perhaps, but in a general sense, I think the choice to make a sexual act be so, like, I guess, almost stripping away any erotic nature to it, and it just be kind of is sort of just you're left with sort of the emotions of it. I thought that really worked for me, and I think using it in that kind of fashion versus just using this idea of like sexuality just to push and push and push and push, which I think it's done plenty enough in a lot of United States made movies. Like, I think that was an impressive choice of difference. But that was not my holy moment. Instead, I think my holy moment may have been in some funky, interesting turn of events. If you're taking all of that's going on in the city as a person, as like, if the city is alive, they are all a part of it. In a similar sense of like, technically speaking, we are all a part of, like, not to get too far out mystical, any of that, but like to borrow some language from Pinterest quotes of like, we are all the universe and in the universe interacting with itself kind of thing. Not quite that hard, or not going quite that far into it, but if you're taking this, all of that happens in the film and that all happens in the city as like almost a person, it leaves me personally more on like a hopeful note of pretty much everything that I see is, or that I've saw in the movie, unless on my 2 rewatches I'm just like completely inept. It looked like everything took place at night or sort of night, and then that is like the one time after coming out of the tunnel, which you have the sick frame that was the poster, and then you see up and it looks like it's like the morning, it looks like it's dawn, and not in a typical feel-goodsy fashion of everything's going to be okay kind of thing, but in a more of a sort of maybe realism fashion. I thought it was interesting to do that, and it kind of showed you a lot of lows, some highs perhaps, but all of that is a part of life, and life cannot always be dark. It will, like, the sun will rise again kind of thing. So I found, just visually speaking, not necessarily in the portrayal of a scene as some of my previous like holy moments might have been, just the choice of doing that visually really worked for me.
Reminds me, your comment about being a part of the universe, of a Norm Macdonald quote, of all people. And he's responding in a tweet to Neil deGrasse Tyson, who says, "The universe is blind to our sorrows and indifferent to our pains. Have a nice day." And he says, "Neil, there is a logic flaw in your little aphorism that seems quite telling. Since you and I are part of the universe, then we would also be indifferent and uncaring. Perhaps you forgot, Neil, that we are not superior to the universe, but merely a fraction of it. Nice day indeed." And yeah, it just, takes the cynicism from the initial like statement and turns it on its head.
Yeah, the idea of like, it's so easy to look at something like the universe and being callous, like we're just the classic statement of we're just a dirt ball spinning in the universe. But it's so easy to overlook that, yeah, the universe is big, and I don't know what you guys believe. I don't know, you, the audience, you guys listening to me, I don't know what you guys believe, if there's a God that created or whatnot, or not a God. That's not besides the point. The point is the universe is made up of so many things, and one of those things is humans. And as humans, we don't have to be cynical. And I think, Vega, that was such a beautiful holy moment that I never ever would have picked up on. But the idea of like, there was this undercurrent of like, yeah, despair and loneliness and missing your chance for love. But there also was a big undercurrent of hope, and it's never too late. And that idea of like that dawn breaking as one of the last shots, I think is really, really beautiful. And you are correct in my research to give some background to this film. One of the trivia things that I found online was that apparently it was all shot, every single scene was at night. So it was very much a whole movie at night, and the idea of maybe we're finally breaking into the dawn with these two characters moving forward with their lives. So that's beautiful. I kind of feel like a garbage person because my holy moment is not nearly as sophisticated or as deep as y'all's. I will now I don't often rewatch movies period, and I do not often rewatch movies quickly. There are very few movies that I've gotten done and have rewatched it within a day or two. And I always wanted to do a rewatch of this movie because I was like, okay, I think this is good. I think I'm missing a lot of it. I'll get to it at some point. But having this conversation with you guys has really fueled to me to want to rewatch it because I'm excited to see it through this new lens and to kind of get what the filmmaker was going for, and even some of my own perspective changing. I think it'll be a really good rewatch. On that note, so I assume after I rewatch this movie, my holy moment might change, but the holy moment I have for you guys today is still true. On a little bit less serious note than Jeffrey and Vega, I think Western comedies are atrocious. I think the genre of comedy in the Western hemisphere of films and television is so, so bad. There's an amazing, I feel like anyone who has done any type of film education, whether you went to a school or just taught it yourself, there's this really great YouTube video where a guy basically is breaking down the humor of Edgar Wright, the director, and kind of comparing it to a lot of Western and non-Western comedies and how Edgar Wright just does such a phenomenal job with humor. Go watch it if you want. It's awesome. But the point is, I think comedies are done so poorly, and they're often reliant on getting relatively funny. Let's get Will Ferrell and Jack Black for the millionth time, and let's put them in a funny scenario, and they'll riff off each other. And I just think that's the lowest form of comedy. I think it works really well for sitcoms. Again, I don't think it's a highbrow sitcom, but I think it can be fun and relaxing. But I think it's such a poor way to portray humor. And I think this film, and specifically I've noticed with Japanese and Korean and Chinese films, I was thinking of the movie Memories of a Murder. I think Memories of a Murder. Have you guys seen the movie?
I have not, no.
Nope.
I'm 99% sure that it's the same director who did Parasite, the really big movie that came out back in like 2019. Phenomenal, crazy good movie. I would love to review it on the podcast. It's super dark, super depressing, super upsetting movie. But there's this amazing reoccurring bit where it follows detectives trying to find a serial killer. But there's an amazing reoccurring bit where the assistant cop just will come out of frame, full on flying into frame, drop kicking people in the face. Like just will run into frame, throwing his whole body and just like drop kicking these people in the face in the funniest way. And the point is, I think Asians really lean into physical comedy, and I really love it. And they lean into this fun situational comedy that's not just based off of two people saying funny things and maybe even prompt too. I give a movie high praise if I break out laughing. And in the scene where he's kidnapped all the people and he's driving down the interstate in an ice cream truck and they're eating ice cream, so he's blackmailing them into paying for this ice cream that he doesn't even own. And then he's having an internal monologue because, he's mute. And he's like, I've always wanted to be an ice cream truck driver. It's such a great job. I asked my dad one time why he doesn't own an ice cream truck. And my dad said, because it killed our mother. Cut to the next scene. And it was so funny. So just simply put, my holy moment was the fact that they paid enough attention and crafted jokes and situations that are so absurd and funny, because I get really frustrated with comedy. So anytime I see it done well, I'm a big fan. Again, now that I've had this conversation, I think my holy moment might change because I really understand this film a lot better after talking to you two. But it really is true to me that it is hard to do comedy well. And I'm not trying to like judge. I've done short films with comedy elements that are fine. They're okay. I get the desire to fall into like the easy way out, but there's so much comedy to be expressed through the human experience, and I think we just do such a poor job doing that. So that's my holy moment.
I think that's a good holy moment. I think that the comedy was done very well, particularly with that character. And I also really like that following his little anecdote about his mother, dying from the ice cream truck and him talking about his father's response to that question. Then it cuts to us like meeting his father. So it's a nice segue.
Yeah. Which is what you'll find with Edgar Wright. A lot of his jokes are set up, and then paid off within like the next scene. It makes the movie feel alive. It feels like the locations and the scenes and the editing are telling jokes, not just knock, knock, who's there? Here's a joke. I feel like Asian humor does that a lot as well, which is fun. But yeah, one quick question. I wasn't planning on asking this, but just since we're on the topic, what was the funniest one line, one moment, one scene? What was the funniest moment in the movie for y'all?
It might just be the ice cream truck, not so much for the spoken joke that he says, but just the absurd situation that poor man finds himself in, where he's forced to eat an ice cream cone, and then all of a sudden we cut to his whole family is being blackmailed to stay there. And then, he's like, I think I'm done eating. And then the convict brings out this massive tub of ice cream.
With like what we said, such an innocent pureness to him.
Yeah.
Like he's not, to what we know, being malicious. He's almost like, again, he gets joy out of having purpose. And he's kind of been a bum for most of his life. And he's genuinely like, I can have purpose. Like, you're going to pay me, don't get me wrong, but I can have purpose giving you this ice cream. It was so cute. I highly suggest anyone listening, if you don't watch the movie, go check out that ice cream truck scene. You don't really need context because they don't give you context. They just throw you into that scene and it's hilarious.
And he even says like, yeah, I think I could tell that family was enjoying that ice cream,
Yeah. Like, yeah, he cared. Yeah. But what about you, Vega? Do you have one that comes to mind? I know we've talked about a lot of them.
Yeah, I think, just hitting it really quickly and closely. I think one of the funniest things to me was just the visual language of the scene in McDonald's where you just look around and there's not a single soul there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the two of them.
It was a really good bit. What I also loved about that scene was they're sitting like shoulder to shoulder, and then in between their two heads in the background is like Lord Ronald McDonald, like a big statue of him, of like Ronald McDonald standing above them, towering above them, kind of watching them eat McDonald's. I thought that was really funny.
Also, the scene where the convict and the girl who's trying to get back with her boyfriend, they're having lunch or dinner at a diner, and then everything erupts into chaos, and everyone's beating up everyone else, and he accidentally hits her, and then she purposefully hits him.
Yeah. I also love just like in the most crazy fashion, because he's pining after a woman who clearly doesn't like him back, and she's like pining after probably some American with blonde hair, so he dyes his hair blonde. And then he's like monologuing because he can't talk, and he's like, yeah, things didn't work out. I never saw her again. Like we didn't go on any dates. Crazy. The next day, my hair turned back to being black. Like it just undyed itself. It's just so absurd. But yeah, thank you for humoring me there, guys. But before we wrap things up, before we send y'all on your way, we obviously need to rank this movie. Same thing as The Holy Moment. If you guys are kind of curious, maybe a little more in depth about our ranking system, we go over it more in depth in the previous episodes. Go take a listen there. But we have 7 rankings. They're not numerical. They are different categories of what we think is holy. So yeah, let's jump on in. I'm gonna go with you first, Jeffrey. I'm really curious. What would you rank this movie?
I think that I would give this a drunken monk. And again, in my mind, drunken monk, British grandma. These rankings aren't always. It's not always going to be the case where monk is higher than grandma or grandma's below monk. But I would give this a drunken monk. It took me on a journey, and I saw some really human things. And when I think of the drunken monk, I see him sort of stumbling around and getting himself into trouble. And that this movie evokes that feeling for me, right? We're getting into trouble, we're making mischief, having fun, and then learning something very true about the human experience as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about you, Vega? Where would you fall on our scale of holiness?
I think it's a mix. I might have to, on an overall note, pretty much for very similar reasons as Jeffrey, land somewhere in Drunken Monk, but I definitely think there was some moments in the film, some parts of the film, some things that were done within the film that feel so like not even just like that they like got close to touching like holiness, but that they just were that human, that level of authentic. But I don't know if maybe a however fourth, fifth rewatch will like hit me with that. I don't know if like the entire film works in that way for me.
So you would land more on the Drunken Monk for now.
Yes.
Okay. Man, I am so torn because again, one of my favorite things I found out about doing this podcast is like I mean, I think most people we watch movies, maybe we have a little bit of conversation about them with like your friends there, maybe at the most, but usually you watch a movie and it was enjoyable and you go to bed. Really diving into these movies has made me appreciate these movies more than I ever would if I watched it by myself. Like I won't lie to you. I got done watching the movie. I knew I had liked aspects of it, but I was just so confused. And I, would have, if we were giving this a numerical rating, I would have thrown like a 5, maybe a 6 and moved on and never thought about it again. But the fact that we really sat here and I got to hear your guys' opinion, hear your holy moments, see your perspectives has really made me enjoy this movie, like in hindsight, way more. And it really wants me to go back and rewatch it. So I'm torn here. Part of me actually really wants to give it Creato Adamus. So a little bit of backstory about that category. Creato Adamus is the Latin term for the creation of Adam. If you guys know the painting, it's God holding out his finger, Adam reaching out his finger. They're almost touching. Our ideas, like if they're touching, and you're in this context, God is touching humans, his creation. It is the most holy thing possible. It has reached the holy moment. But in the painting, they're a few inches away. So it's so close to being perfectly holy, but it's not quite. Again, not specifically holy in the context of a religious context, more of holy and did this movie try and do everything in its power to tell the story it needed to tell? And so part of like Vega was saying, honestly, certain moments were the holy moment. Certain moments were Creato Adamos, and certain moments were like the drunken monk. So the movie was a little bit all over the place for me. And I think I need to do this. Even though your guys' perspectives have really moved me towards wanting to love it even more, I think as a filmmaker, I need to do the proper thing and go back and watch it and see if those truths are still there. And then I can maybe give it Creato Adamus. But for right now, I'm going to give it a very high level of the drunken monk, where I like Jeffrey and Vega guys' explanation of like, he's getting into mischief. He's trying out things you never would have think to try. They're crazy looking. And sometimes they work. And sometimes he's drunk and they look stupid. So I guess we're all in agreement. That's impressive. So the fourth movie, the Holy Moment podcast here that we reviewed, Fallen Angels, has landed itself very snugly in the Drunken Monk category. Good for it. Definitely a movie that I enjoyed watching. Now, before we leave, guys, 2 things. First, before Jeffrey pulls a movie out of the hat, Vega, tell all the lovely folks at home, the women, the gentlemen, where they can interact with us and how.
If you want to so interact with these 3 fine folk, me, Jeffrey, Nathaniel, you could find us on, well, if you want to listen to us, which I'm assuming you are currently listening to us if you've gotten to this point of the podcast, then as an audio form, you could find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, on Amazon Music, Castbox, Good Pods, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public. Have I even used half these platforms before? No, but you can find us there. Where else can you find us? For the full video, if you want to see our beautiful faces, you can find us on YouTube and you can find us on Facebook. And for any other way that you might want to interact with us, if you want to watch little short clips and reels of quips and neat things that we've said, then we are on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, and that godforsaken app, Twitter, but now it's known as X. And we would love to hear different hills that you might die on. If you want to DM us, or if you want to email us, if you want to post a comment, if you want to just interact with us on any way, we would love to hear from you.
Heck yeah, we do. We'd love to hear y'all's voices through the electronic world known as the interweb. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Will Jeffrey get to host an episode on this podcast? So yes, we have 5 categories. Each of us put a movie in per category, 15 movies. We've already done 4. And whoever's movie is drawn from the hat they're the host. So my movie was drawn last week, Fallen Angels. I'm the host. We have gone 4 episodes and Jeffrey's not hosted, and the goal is that he never hosts. Kidding. I think he would do a phenomenal job.
Yeah, if I don't get it, then next time we pull from the hat, I'm rigging it.
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey, you have, for all we know, is that you've been rigging it and you just don't want to host. You're the one with the hat.
Well, if I could get a drum roll.
Drumming.
I'm drumming.
Percussion noises.
The game.
Hey, Freak Me. That's also my movie. Oh my gosh, Jeffrey, you're really not gonna host. I mean, it's gonna be really nice, like, because this first season is gonna go kind of end right around Christmas. So by the time we hit Thanksgiving, Christmas, the busy season, all my movies will have been watched, and I can just sit back and be a co-host, and you guys will be screwed. So this is my movie. This is for the category Made by a Criminal. It was the actor Sean Penn who was in it. So I'll do some more research for the next episode when I host, and we'll get into it. But I think he went to jail for like drug possession or something like that. But yeah, we'll be watching The Game. Go watch it. Come back. David Fincher movie, so I'm super psyched about that. However, I wanted to watch one of the comedies on the list because I want to stop watching sad, upsetting things. But not next week because this is David Fincher we're talking about. But heck yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining us today here at the Holy Moment Podcast. We had a ton of fun reviewing Fallen Angels, and never forget, all you have to do is tilt your head and lay it down, and you can change your perspective on the entire world. We love you all, and we hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and your week. Until next time.